Okay, so get this. Imagine deciding making brake pads just isn't doing it for you anymore. So you pivot to counterfeiting, specifically printing $250 million worth of fake U.S. bills. That's the story we're diving into today. And, well,
Uh,
trust me, you won't believe this guy's audacity.
$250 million. It's hard to even fathom. This wasn't some small-time operation. This was meticulously planned.
And it all started, like you said, with good old-fashioned research. We're not talking like Googling how to make money fast here, right? This guy, Frank, went deep, dissecting the security features of U.S. currency, figuring out how to replicate the designs, the inks, even the feel of the paper.
It's fascinating you mention that because a lot of people think counterfeiters is just about having a good printer. But it's so much more complex than that. Take the paper, for example. Frank discovered that the US dollar uses this incredibly specific paper. It's from a single mill, actually, in Germany.
Wow.
Not just any paper can handle the high-resolution printing and all the security features they pack into a real bill.
So how on earth did Frank convince this mill to sell him their super-secret paper?
A bullshit story is how he put it.
I mean, can you imagine making that phone call? Hi, yeah, I need a massive order of your exclusive banknote paper for a school project. It's mind-boggling that it worked.
It really is. And this attention to detail, it really highlights how committed Frank was to this plan. He didn't cut corners. He set up a dedicated print shop, invested in top-of-the-line equipment, essentially turned himself into a one-man counterfeiting factory.
We're talking 5 months of nonstop printing. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted just thinking about it. And here's a question that keeps coming back to me. Why the U.S. dollar? I mean, he was in Canada, right? Why go through all this trouble for a foreign currency?
You're right, he was based in Canada. There are a few reasons why the US dollar was his target. First, it's one of the most traded currencies globally, meaning it's more likely to be accepted and less likely to raise suspicion, especially if you're not spending it in the US. Secondly, the exchange rate. At the time, it worked in Frank's favor. He was planning to offload the bills at a 30% discount, which, considering the volume, would still mean a hefty profit. We're talking about a potential $80 million payday.
$80 million. It's enough to make anyone question their career choices. But before we get lost in, the allure of all that cash, it's important to understand the potential consequences here, right? Counterfeiting, especially on this scale. Does introducing millions of fake dollars into the global economy actually hurt anyone? Or is it just like a victimless crime? Let's unpack that a bit. It's almost impossible to fathom. Having $250 million in fake 20s just at your disposal. I know I'd be tempted to book a one-way ticket to a private island somewhere and just live out my days in luxury. But Frank, he was playing a different game.
He was. Most people picture counterfeiters, they're living these lavish lifestyles, but the reality is much more, well, subdued. Frank knew that flashing around huge sums of cash would only attract unwanted attention. His strategy was about subtlety. It was about slowly feeding the fake bills into the system, where they'd be harder to detect.
And he was successful at it. Over several years, Frank managed to sell off around $50 million.
$50 million, that's a staggering amount.
Yeah, it really is. But it also begs the question,
Yeah.
who's buying these massive amounts of counterfeit cash? It can't just be like regular people making everyday purchases.
Exactly. We're talking about organized networks here, often involved in, well, let's just say other illicit activities. These groups need a way to launder their illegal profits, right? Counterfeit currency. It provides a convenient solution.
So it's like this whole shadowy underworld operating just beneath the surface of, legitimate financial systems.
Exactly. And that's why law enforcement agencies are so keen to infiltrate these networks. It's not just about seizing the fake money. It's about unraveling a much larger criminal enterprise.
So it sounds like something straight out of a crime thriller. And speaking of thrills, this is where Frank's story, it takes a dramatic turn. Okay. So he's sitting on this mountain of fake cash. He's successfully moved a good chunk of it. But he wants more.
Greed is a powerful motivator.
It certainly seems that way. So Frank, fueled by this ambition, he wants to offload the remaining $200 million. And he decides to expand his operation, starts reaching out to new contacts, exploring new markets. And this, unfortunately for him, this is where he makes a critical mistake.
Because those new contacts were actually undercover agents.
Precisely. Frank walked right into a trap set by the authorities, who, it turns out, were already onto his operation, just waiting for the right moment to pounce.
And that moment arrived with the roar of a helicopter.
You're not kidding. They had a police helicopter, like, monitoring his every move.
That's right. They were watching his every step, just waiting for him to slip up.
So there's Frank at his girlfriend's house.
No.
Totally oblivious, right? I bet he was already mentally spending that $200 million.
Oh, I'm sure.
No idea his world is about to come crashing down.
And crash it did. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, along with the U.S. Secret Service, they show up ready to make an arrest.
I bet those Secret Service agents, they felt like they'd hit the jackpot, right? They found his whole printing operation, nearly $1 million in fake bills.
Oh, talk about a smoking gun.
You'd think that'd be it. Game over. But here's where it gets interesting. Frank was in Canada. And initially, he seemed pretty confident, that he wouldn't face any serious consequences.
Really?
He actually thought Canadian laws would be more lenient on counterfeiting, especially since it was a foreign currency.
That's a common misconception, actually. People assume legal systems are, drastically different from one country to another. But with something like this, counterfeiting a major global currency like the US dollar, those lines get very blurred. You've got international agreements, cooperation between countries. It's not so easy to just, hide behind borders.
And the U.S. Secret Service, they were not messing around. They wanted Frank extradited to the U.S., where he was looking at a potential 60-year sentence.
Wow.
60 years. That's not exactly a slap on the wrist.
That would make anyone lawyer up, that's for sure.
And he did.
Mm.
But this wasn't your typical plea bargain.
Yeah.
His lawyer, he came up with this, brilliant, almost daring legal strategy.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Remember that police helicopter surveillance?
Right.
Well, even though they had Frank dead to rights with the printing operation, they never actually caught him on camera exchanging the counterfeit cash during that monitored meeting.
Ah, I see.
So his lawyer argued that the evidence from the search warrant was inadmissible. They couldn't directly link Frank to the actual exchange of the fake bills.
So essentially they were arguing that the police had jumped the gun with the raid.
Exactly. It was a long shot, but
It worked.
it worked. The court agreed. They suspended the extradition to the U.S.
Get out of here.
Yeah. After just 6 weeks in jail, Frank was a free man. But here's the thing. This legal victory didn't mean he was totally off the hook.
Right. The Canadian authorities were still building their case.
Exactly. And this is where Frank makes a move that, well, you could say it was audacious.
Okay.
He knew they were building a case against him, right?
Right.
And he still had $200 million in fake bills to leverage. So he makes them an offer they can't refuse.
What did he do?
He offers to reveal the location of the remaining $200 million in counterfeit bills in exchange for complete freedom.
Talk about a power play.
I know, right?
So what did they do?
It was risky, but it was also brilliant strategically. Because from the government's perspective, recovering that amount of counterfeit money, huge win.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not even about punishing Frank at that point. It's about protecting the financial system, right?
Yeah.
Maintaining public trust in the currency.
Yeah, exactly.
And, well, they took the deal.
No way.
Yeah. Frank told them where to find the remaining $200 million, hidden in a nondescript box truck in a hotel parking lot.
A box truck.
A box truck.
You'd think he'd go for something a little more, inconspicuous.
Right, like a secret underground vault or something.
Exactly.
But I guess when you're dealing with that much cash, maybe a box truck.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the perfect hiding spot, because it's so unexpected.
That's true. That's true. It's like hiding in plain sight.
Exactly.
So in the end, how long was Frank actually behind bars?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
6 weeks total for attempting to print and distribute $250 million.
It makes you think, was 6 weeks a small price to pay for such a brazen crime?
It really does.
Or does it say something about, the complexities of the justice system, where sometimes recovering the assets outweighs actually punishing the crime?
It's a story that really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Risk versus reward. The allure of easy money. The lengths people will go to for, well, I guess you could say financial freedom, though I don't recommend Frank's approach.
Not at all.
But it's clear. Frank's story, it's a wild ride through the world of counterfeiting, ambition, audacity. And it leaves us with, well, more questions than answers, really.
It certainly does.
And on that note, we wrap up our deep dive into Frank's incredible story. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and maybe, double check those 20s in your wallet.